Welcome to episode 8 of 3-Player Co-op. I'm Sean.
I'm Mark.
And I'm Mike.
Today we're going to talk about Retake Mass Effect, Rockstar's multiplayer cruise, and poor sequels. So the Mass Effect trilogy started in 2007, and many players created their character, Commander Shepard, in the first game and have imported him from Mass Effect 2 into 3. Lots of them, however, have been rather annoyed by Mass Effect 3's ending and have petitioned BioWare to make some changes. So guys, what do we think of fans having this much power over developers?
Personally, I'm not a huge fan of it. I think that as a piece of art, without sounding too pretentious, this is something that BioWare have developed. They've put their time into it and the effort. And a writer has put together a narrative for this game based on their experience with the universe, etc. I don't think it's fair for fans to come out and say, you know what, we're not happy with it, we want the ending changed. Without spoiling anything really, I think the issue that a lot of people have is they want an ending where they get absolutely everything they were looking for. So, like, there's been a lot of comments in the media about this. I know Ken Levine came out and made a statement saying that he thinks that if fans got the ending they wanted, that they still wouldn't be happy with it. So maybe it's a case of finding a happy medium. But yeah, the general consensus that I've been reading anyway on forums is fans want an ending where they get absolutely everything, and it's, I don't know, more saccharine than Hollywood could ever come up with.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Mike in this regard. I mean, we've all seen movies or read books or anything like that where we've been disappointed at the end of it, but it doesn't give you the right to go for your money back, especially after putting 40 hours into it.
Yeah, just to touch on what Mark was saying there, I think the most ridiculous thing of all that has come out of this is the idea that fans feel that they should be entitled to have their money back. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. You know, you've spent the money on this, you've gotten, let's say, maybe 35, 40 hours of entertainment out of it, and you're not happy about the last 2% of the game, and 2% is being charitable here. To say that you're entitled to your money back it's frankly ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see people leaving the cinema and going up and asking for their money back, or going back to a bookshop and asking for their money back because they didn't enjoy it. It's just nuts. And it says something about fans' sense of entitlement. You know, just because millions of people have bought this game and they've played all three and they've played them a million times, it doesn't give them the right to dictate how the story goes.
We did hear about the storyline being leaked earlier, so maybe that caused a bit of a rewrite, and maybe it's not exactly the way they wanted it to pan out. You know, sometimes there isn't an ending that you expect, but it's the way that it was designed. And this isn't like movies where you sometimes have a third party stepping in and saying this isn't right, and then you have the director's cut. This is the director's cut, so this is the pure ending that was planned for Mass Effect 3.
Of course, BioWare's Casey Hudson has said that one of their objectives was to get fans talking, and it certainly has done that.
No, definitely. I don't see as well if it could have put anyone off at this stage, because people have put so much time into it, as Mike was saying again, that can they really just draw a line under 2 and say, I'm not going to play 3 because of the last 10 minutes?
I think this is sort of a double-edged sword for the Mass Effect universe. So the problem I see with is the sense of ownership. So, I mean, you could say video game fans have a sense of ownership for a lot of things, but because the very nature of Mass Effect was that you shape the story yourself, I think people probably have more of a vested interest in this game and this narrative than they have in most others. So with that sense of ownership comes perhaps a heightened sense of disappointment if something happens that you really don't like.
Of course, this isn't the first time that DLC has been announced that's going to change an ending. I mean, we saw with Fallout 3, Broken Steel came along and it didn't really change the ending, it added to it and gave it a new dimension. Could we see something similar in Mass Effect 3?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing now. Having experienced the ending, I would find it difficult to see them changing it. I can't see how it would make much sense to change the ending, and it would be a real cheat for, I think, most people who have experienced the ending, and some people if they have enjoyed the ending as well. An extension to the ending seems more likely.
Changing it seems like a tough balancing act, because you are going to have certain people who were happy with it, possibly the quieter people, because, you know, that old adage of when you're happy with something you'll tell 3 people, when you're angry with something you'll tell 3,000 people, and that could be what we're seeing here. There's probably a lot of happy fans out there. You said that the Fallout 3 DLC kind of extended the ending a bit. Was that planned all along, and could Mass Effect 3 have a similar background?
It would appear so. It did come out very quickly. we'll see how quickly the Mass Effect 3 ending has changed, and see how long these things generally take.
Okay, so the interesting thing about the Broken Steel DLC was that it extended the gameplay as well. This wasn't just here's a retake on the ending. This is what happens after the ending. Any sort of additional gameplay to the Mass Effect ending would be almost entirely redundant. The other thing I think that would be interesting to talk about is there going to be a charge for this? If BioWare released the real ending for Mass Effect and charge money for it, they are, it's exaggerating to say this, but they're signing their death warrant essentially.
Yeah, on the one hand, I mean, people will get the endings that they wanted in a way, but I mean, they've paid for the money for what they thought would be the ending in the first place, so I don't think it can come out of the charge.
Yeah, demanding money for this will be a serious slap in the face.
They've made it clear, EA have made it clear, anybody involved with this game has made it clear that there is a future for Mass Effect. What you don't want is for that future to begin on a sour note where a lot of your fans are really disappointed at something you've done.
So Amazon.com are actually giving people their money back based on these complaints. What do we think of that?
Again, you've paid for it, you've played it for the 40 hours, it's a bit late to be saying, I'm not happy with this. And the last 2%, as Mike was charitably giving it, it can't take away from the 40 to hundreds of hours that you've put into the games up to this point.
Yeah, you've gotten your value up.
Yeah, this is bullshit. That's what it is, okay? Amazon giving people their money back feeds into this stupid sense of entitlement that people have. Oh, I wasn't happy about that. I want my money back. Get over it.
In other news, Rockstar have announced their cross-multiplayer initiative. You'll be able to form crews in Max Payne 3, and then you'll be able to carry them forward into Grand Theft Auto 5. So guys, what do we think of this?
I think it's a really exciting move. I mean, if you look at Rockstar games, they're traditionally single-player games, so this is really putting the social in the social club, because finally you'll be able to link up with other players and form vendettas, which will then carry through into other games and form rivalries and feuds, and that's a really interesting perspective and something that could work in other games and genres.
So I've used Rockstar Social Club, I wouldn't say extensively, but with each game that I've bought, and that's most of the Rockstar games this generation, I've made a point of going onto the website and seeing what the Social Club could offer me. At the moment, it's, I would say, a fairly superficial experience. You see some stats, and that's nice, but they're really talking about tying the games together in a very meaningful way now with tangible results on your console.
Yeah, it has been pretty superficial up to now. I mean, they've released some quite impressive stats. I remember for Red Dead Redemption, they released a really complex stat list, like the players had killed 1 million cougars or something like that. Damn cougars.
Yeah, so I think enhancing and developing multiplayer in this way is a really great idea. Traditionally we've had competitive multiplayer, and now we're seeing cooperative multiplayer a lot more. What I would have seen as maybe a precursor to this was efforts that Bizarre Creations went to. So my first experience would have been with Project Gotham 3, where you could download ghosts of your friends and you could race against them, or later on for Geometry Wars, Geometry Wars 2, where you'd always see your friends score at the top of the screen, so there was always that rivalry and they were always pushing you to do that little bit extra. It's these additional facets to multiplayer that add quite a bit, I think.
It's an extension to the whole cooperative and competitive element of it, because instead of creating one clan for Black Ops and then months down the line you go, okay, Black Ops 2 is coming out, let's try and get the posse back together. Instead, it's already there for you. You can all just link up straight away and you can keep your rivalries going. So if you had a rivalry against a team from another town or whatever, straight away you're in there and you're like, okay, that's the guy I want to get, that's the guy who would mean more as a kill than this random Joe Soap down the road.
Yeah, it's clever. It just keeps the whole multiplayer momentum going.
So, guys, what do you see as being the future of this kind of feature?
I would love to see it being brought into sports games, for example, or even racing games where you could build a crew, because I'm big into FIFA, as some people to this channel will know, and I never really know who I've played before and who I haven't, but being able to set up like a franchise with myself and a few other friends, and then being able to represent that franchise on the global scale, it just seems really, really interesting.
Another example, say, for a racing game could be Forza 4, which is out and doing pretty well at the moment. So there's a new Forza game supposed to be coming out the end of the year. It's Forza Horizon or something like that. So they could carry it over as well. You could have racing somebody in that, and they'd say the last time you raced against this player, you know, they were 10 seconds faster than you on this track.
And even Need for Speed titles, like it was always about building a crew, but it was always kind of a single player experience. Whereas now you could go into a race, there could be 3 from your crew and then 2 or 3 from another crew, and that adds more to that race. I think it just adds a lot more to it. I'd be really excited about seeing this in other titles.
Yeah, it kind of takes away the disconnect when you start a new multiplayer game. You're immediately comfortable and you immediately have objectives. We got to beat these guys, because that's how it is.
So say if you come into SSX, for example, that's the perfect example. They're giving you recommendations of friends and you can join global events, but it's always these, you know, faceless people that you're beating, and that's fine. And even the friends that you make through the game, it's one thing, but if you were to join part of a crew or an SSX team or whatever, and then you're going up against rival teams, that adds more to it. Tiger Woods is bringing in the idea of country clubs, which is kind of this but on a local facet. So again, it's kind of an extension of that. It's definitely a feature that other companies could use and probably will use in the future. I can definitely see it taking off.
Okay, and finally for this week, with the release and poor reviews of Ninja Gaiden 3 and Silent Hill Downpour, what sequels have we not enjoyed?
Okay, so it's not really fair for me to pass judgment on it, but I played the demo to Final Fantasy 13-2 and didn't even finish the demo. I just turned it off because I was so disappointed with what they did with it.
Why were you disappointed though?
Okay, so one of the things I like about Final Fantasy games is the diverse cast of characters and the different people that you can have as part of your party. So for Final Fantasy 13-2, they took the strongest character in the game, one of the stronger heroines from the series, Lightning, and relegated her to a support role, replaced her with her younger sister, and added in a new character called Noel Kreese, and none of it was even remotely compelling. And that's the extent of what you've got. You have those 2 characters and a random monster as your third party member. It didn't appeal to me even remotely, and as a result I have not bought the game and I can't see myself buying it for quite a long time.
But they did exactly the same thing in Final Fantasy X-2, the Charlie's Angels Final Fantasy, where they took out the coolest character, Auron.
Sean, you're not making a really compelling argument. Most people would hold Final Fantasy X-2 as one of the worst in the series. Is this supposed to sway me towards playing 13-2?
So this whole thing really isn't unprecedented. We kind of expect a weaker game in the whatever 2s.
So the unusual thing about sequels in gaming is, you know, contrary to say sequels in movies where there's kind of an unspoken rule that the sequel is usually not as good as the original. In games, there's an expectation that the sequel must be better. So quite often we get sequels in gaming that are vastly superior, but every once in a while you're going to get a sequel that really just disappoints on a number of levels.
Devil May Cry 2 was a disaster. They completely changed Dante's character and they took out all of the challenge and all of the interesting environments. They just ruined it. Now, they did bring it back for Devil May Cry 3, which is probably the best game in the series, but it still doesn't take away from the blotch that is 2.
I think most people would say they're fairly disappointed with Resident Evil 5. I personally enjoyed it quite a lot, and I think it was the logical extension to what they did with 4, but a lot of people were disappointed that it seemed to be very action oriented.
Resident Evil 5 was flawed in a number of ways. I really enjoyed it as well, but I played 4 recently as the HD re-release, and I realised just how much better 4 was. There were just loads of Easter eggs. I would say that 4 is more like a classic Japanese title, whereas 5 is more Americanized and straightforward.
Capcom have said actually that the survival horror market just isn't big enough for them, which makes sense. So a lot of the games are going the more action orientated route, and we see that through a lot of aspects of entertainment, that they just go for the big flashy explosions pretty quickly.
Yeah, Mark makes an interesting point there. So Capcom came out with this news story. Does this kind of news have us worried about what we might see for Resident Evil 6? I mean, Capcom essentially confirming that it's going to be more action oriented.
It's not going to be a classic Resident Evil, definitely not.
Some people got a bit silly about Resident Evil 4 though. Resident Evil 4 is peerless. People want to go back to the old style, fixed camera angles, running through doors, and much as I like that, it had reached its end point.
Part of me was a little bit disappointed because I really do love the original Resident Evil games up as far as Code Veronica.
So if any of you guys have any sequels that really disappointed you, tell us about them in the comment section below. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you again next time.